Welcome to CLICKERBAIT, the Last of Us TV show where three gamers come together to unpack the HBO show. And three of us have, something in common. We love the Last of Us video game. I love the Last of Us merch. I love Ellie, Dita. I like Pedro Pascal. I don't think I'm the only one that likes him. Got some fans on this show. Also, if you like The Last of Us, you found the best place to unpack each and every episode, which you're probably like, oh my God, there's no new episodes of The Last of Us. Well, not yet, but we wanted to get started. We wanted to start early. So, as we were saying, there's no better place to get your Last of Us needs met than right here, right now, forever on CLICKERBAIT. Kayla, I hand it off to you.
Yeah. Well, hey, if you are seeing this, thankfully you made it here because we do have our normal regularly scheduled programming is JK Games podcast. But if you're watching this, you did find that you can find all of our stuff still for CLICKERBAIT on our JK Games podcast. But we are taking a brief hiatus from JK Games while we focus on everything The Last of Us. It is on a separate podcasting feed. So just wanted to throw that out there early on. So if you're listening live and you can't make the whole episode, or you want to catch the end, you want to look at the future, it is a separate feed. So just search CLICKERBAIT on anywhere where you listen to podcasts and you can find it. But what is this show? What is this show going to be exactly today as we speak? Well, once the season starts, we're going to be breaking down every single episode, just like we did with season 1. But don't worry, you don't have to go back and listen to all of our previous episodes because today we're going to be recapping. Yeah, maybe not. Actually, I listened to some.
They're not bad, but it's like early Jerica Kayla podcasting days. We look and sound a little different now.
It was 2 years ago. Can you believe it?
Yeah, it's crazy. We've grown so much. Jerica, our lovely producer, has made all these lovely things and come so far. So shout out to her. Absolutely. But yeah, if you don't have to go back, that's why we're doing this episode. We are going to be revisiting our favorite moments, our least favorite moments, all of those things, and building the hype for season 2, which starts on April 13th.
We're so close.
We're going to recap, we're going to predict, we're going to build, we're going to go over all the news since we've been on season 1. So there's a lot to kind of break down. And we've done a couple of episodes here and there since we started season 1. Like we did a casting predictions, which is kind of funny to look at now to see how wrong we were. But yeah, all things how it compares to the game and everything in between. So just objectively the show itself, how it compares to the game, what we loved about the game, what we loved about the show. That's what we're going to be covering today.
And in true JK Games fashion, I did not introduce myself. I'm Jerica, one of your hosts, and I'm
Kayla.
She's the other host. And if you haven't noticed, this season we're shaking things up a little bit. Oh my God, there's another person here. And for season 2, we are bringing in a third member. You've already seen him, so the surprise is out of here. But I do want to do a drum roll because I love doing that on my desk. Patrick, come on down. That's Price is Right, sort of. Price is Right, sort of.
This little Price is Might, I said, meets John Cena.
Yeah, that's beautiful.
It is John Cena. I always think it's Price is Right. It's similar. I feel like that.
Sure, there's a similar refrain or two, maybe. Who knows?
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, Patrick.
Yes.
How's it feel to be on CLICKERBAIT so far?
Look, there's my wedding.
Oh.
The day I met my wife.
Oh.
My just a fellow classmates. And then there's the day I joined CLICKERBAIT. Those are I think the top 3 moments of my life right now.
Wow.
Let's maybe throw in there when I got the game-winning goal of the All-Star Game shootout of Hockey Time USA Hockey in like 2005.
Okay.
Like maybe that's like number 4, perhaps. Wow. But thrilled to be here. So excited. Some Patrick lore 2+ years ago. we tried doing a spinoff of Spotlight Games, which is another podcast that I host, Spotlight TV, with my friend Jeremiah. Jeremiah, if you're listening, thank you for being my friend and doing that show back in the day. But that show rode off into the sunset after a few kind of post Last of Us projects. We launched with a Last of Us podcast dissecting each episode, very similar to CLICKERBAIT. And then that podcast isn't around anymore. So I came to you guys hat in hand and said, please, can I please join the podcast? And you guys were like, okay, sure.
Yeah.
For $100 an episode. I am paying you to be on this podcast, but it's the best $100 per week that I've ever spent.
Beautiful.
So yeah, also a huge effing nut for this game. I can curse, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Big freaking nut for this game. My favorite franchise. I mean,
Big nut.
Sorry, go ahead. You were going to say something?
I said big nut. Sorry.
Big nut. The big
That's all I said. Yeah.
It was worth pausing for. Yeah, I've played these games more times than I can count, and now I've watched the season 1 of the show, more times than I can count. I finished a rewatch earlier today. I think it's like my 4th time watching the show. I'm like weirdly obsessed with The Last of Us, so I'm very happy to be here.
You're great company. Great company. Oh my gosh, I can't wait.
LFG.
Very excited.
You really?
I mean, I think we were talking about like just some new stuff that we learned today, and I was like, this shit's like cocaine to me. I love The Last of Us. I love it so much. Need that on a shirt too. It's like cocaine. I don't know. I've never tried cocaine, so I can't really. That's not a fact. I do not know. I bet it's similar though.
I refuse to answer on the grounds that it may incriminate me.
Okay.
I've never done cocaine.
Thank you all, chat, for being here. There's so many people here. Thank you. I see a reoccurring CLICKERBAIT attendee, Trav Man.
Yes.
From season 1. I love to see the people that are here for the CLICKERBAIT. Welcome, Cog. Good old Cognitive Clips with the 2 gifted subs right off.
Whoa, 2 gifties.
2 gifties. How kind. Big Freakin'. Hello. Damn Good Show. Hello. High Score Weekly, of course. Always here for The Last of Us. And then we got our very own Jake Twitchin, certified Last of Us Part 2 hater, but number 1 in our hearts.
And he brings the boom. That's the truth.
Wow. Incredible. Sorry to derail, Jerica.
No, I'm glad. Thanks. Even though I like have the chat up in the long vertical situation I got, it's like dragging the ground over here. I still was missing it. So thank you. Dragging the ground. Patrick, I do want to hear, and if you're listening and you're back, you're like, oh my God, CLICKERBAIT's back. But yeah, I don't know this Patrick guy. So I also don't follow Drop In, Drop Out, or, I don't listen to JK Games. I just listen to CLICKERBAIT. So Patrick, for everyone else, what's your experience with The Last of Us? And it's a broad question, but
it's a broad question, but I would love to answer it. And maybe, should I take the long route or the short route?
I say take the long route. Let's get people really invested in like, why do you like The Last of Us?
We ramble. Let's go. So back in the early 2010s, when I was in college, growing up, my family, we never had a PlayStation. But I always wanted a PlayStation. Like I borrowed some PlayStations, like specifically the PlayStation 2 from a friend. And then I go to college and I get my student loans to pay for my school, and I get reimbursed. I'm like, oh, there's some extra loans left over. So what did Patrick do? I didn't give them back to the bank. I bought a TV and I bought a PlayStation 3 because I really wanted to finally get to play PlayStation. And I'm at this local game shop where I am living at the time, and I am looking around all these games that I've never heard of. Demon's Souls, Uncharted. I mean, I've heard of some of them, but I had never played them. And I Google best games on the PS3, and I come across a little site called IGN, if you've ever heard of it. And right. And I see, like, you should play Uncharted, you should play Demon's Souls, you should play Metal Gear Solid 4, even though I've only ever played, like, half of one Metal Gear Solid. So I got, like, a bunch of different PlayStation games that were all pretty cheap at the time, and started kind of going down that path of catching up on all of these PlayStation exclusives and franchises that I'd never played before. And through that, found Podcast Beyond, which is, on other podcasts before I've talked about how that kind of eventually got me where I am today with podcasting. But I started playing all sorts of PlayStation games. And then eventually, so this would have been probably like fall 2010. And then 2013 rolls around, to kind of cut ahead a few years, and Podcast Beyond is so hyped about this new game coming from Naughty Dog. They're leading, like they're talking about like when it's first revealed at E3 and all these things, and I'm like now properly in like the hype train of video games. I'm following along enough, yeah, and like I'm still very much just a consumer. Like I'm not really thinking about games from like a critical standpoint. I'm just like, ooh, game is fun, I want to play it. And then I played The Last of Us, and it kind of like unlocked this part of my brain where it showed me, and I think a lot of people have had this experience, but I kind of had this first aha moment where, oh wow, like a game can really like actually move you and like make you think about your own past and your own like traumas or whatever. Like it can really be like a healing art form in a way. And so that kind of like opened up this like piece of my brain, and I started really like thinking about games in a different way. And in other games around the same time, they came out, things like The Walking Dead Season 1 and Journey and like all these other kind of celebrated games of the time, when I think that's when games kind of really started to, not to say that there weren't games with like really compelling narratives beforehand, like, you know, going all the way back to the 90s, like late 90s, they're some of the best video game stories ever told. I know High Score Weekly in the chat will be like, he says Final Fantasy VI was that moment for me. So like, but for me, this was my moment. And I just kind of couldn't comprehend that, because at the time I'm going to school for acting. I'm in college to get a theater degree, theater performance studies. And like Troy Baker's performance, Ashley Johnson's performance, Nolan North's performance as David, like all of these, I'm like in awe of what I'd never realized could be like some of the best acting still to this day that I've experienced as someone who has studied the art form, who's done the art form, all of those kinds of things. And so I just got really attached to The Last of Us. Like even back then I like would replay it, and then it got re-released on the PS4, the remaster version, immediately bought it, replayed it. Like it kind of became this thing that I would just go back to. And I kind of have played it so many times that in a lot of ways I've kind of become numb to some of its like really affecting moments, just because
my end, I think I lost internet for a second. Like
my stream ended.
I lost my whole network connection. Hold on.
Cog in the chat says Patrick talked too long. Jerica's internet died.
Back now. I'm in.
Hey, we all agreed that I could take the long route. All right.
Wow, Jerica dipped.
I did not. My internet did though, and I don't like. That's never happened before. I'm so sorry, but it just seemed.
Okay.
But I think it's just,
everything's back, like normal.
That's what I was saying. Like,
stop.
It's never happened before, and it's sort of cool, like how quickly it just sort of came back. Okay,
we're so fucking back.
It's like we're like
mid monologue.
I know, and I was captivated. All right, we're back.
Okay,
I have no idea what I was saying.
It's okay.
You were talking about how you were showing your friends, and you're like desensitized to how grim it is, and like that sort of thing. Which I don't want to interrupt your story, but the neurodivergent in me is like, let me relate to the story right now. Yeah. I have something to say. But no, I agree, because I think like what the show did for a lot of people that aren't gamers, which I know we'll get into, and me and Jerica have talked about endlessly before, is that I think it really took down some of the barriers for the story for people that are not traditional gamers to experience the story for what it really is, aside from just like I mean, it is grim, and that's kind of the point, right? Humanity's grim, especially now. And so I'm curious like how it will hit even harder with the current environment. But yeah, I think like it is explaining it to some people out of context is like, what?
Yeah.
But yeah, you were saying that that's how you had desensitized. Or
for sure. Yeah. Thank you. And Cog in the chat said, okay, bud, start from the top. So you took out some loans, which I think is so funny.
Shut up.
Yeah. I think that like there's with this game too. I feel
acting.
Like, yeah. For sure. I feel like, there's also like I feel like this was one of the first games, at least in my experience, of there being so much weight to environmental storytelling and like picking up notes and like learning about just walking into a space and looking at it and saying, oh, I kind of know what happened here.
Yeah.
the door's been
Absolutely.
broken down, and like those kinds of things, and like kind of asking the audience to take a second to kind of consider what's on their screen instead of just like run, shoot, kill, that kind of thing. And then, yeah, and like with just like the general themes, I think have also really spoken to me of this kind of idea of Joel as a character, like the lengths that he'll go to kind of protect his heart, and the lengths that he'll go for love, and having to kind of mend his own trauma from losing his daughter. And I think like in a weird way, I relate to that, because more Patrick lore, and then I'm going to stop my monologue. When I was 13, I was diagnosed with a degenerative form of arthritis called ankylosing spondylitis. And there was like a grieving period from that, because growing up, I always wanted to be an athlete. I played soccer and I played hockey, as I mentioned at the top. And, you know, the childhood dream was, I'm going to go play sports and I'm going to be a professional athlete, even though it wouldn't have happened even if I didn't get diagnosed. But there was I had this immense loss as a young teenager that I had to, you know, against my will, completely change the course of my life. And then I found theater, and I found acting, and I found the arts, and kind of threw myself into that. And you know, that's how I met my wife. And like that, you know, very different kind of parallel, but this idea that after suffering an immense loss, like being able to find something to fill that void is something that really spoke to me. And kind of, I think also is a reason why I'm so drawn to this. So yeah, that's a long-winded way to say I really like The Last of Us.
I love that. I think that's like that. Some of that I didn't know. So thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
Like I knew that you loved The Last of Us, but I never really knew your full connection to it. So I think it's a really good way to start off the season 2 of the show. And I'm sure Jerica agrees too. Like, is just the most of our listeners, I feel like, understand mine and Jerica's connection and background to the game and the show. But I think it's great to hear like your story, and monologuing is what we do here. That's literally
Sure.
Jerica. Can we just remind everyone that Jerica and I spent an hour and a half on a 30-second trailer?
Yeah, it was wild. I was like, this won't take long. And I'm like, there we go.
Literally an hour and a half.
So stupid.
Oh, everybody's showing you lots of love in the chat.
Oh,
Hell
thanks, y'all.
yeah.
Hell yeah.
High Score Weekly is like, this is quality lore.
We love it.
Quality, high
That's the
quality.
nicest thing High Score Weekly's ever said about me. I'm just kidding.
Quality.
I'm just kidding.
Welcome
Finally.
to the club.
Finally, quality lore.
Finally.
This is the
Let's
Patrick
see.
you've been looking for here.
Ooh, and we have some hate from Florida. Jake Twitchin says
Finally,
Florida.
finally.
Thank you.
We have to have equal balance of
Correct.
love.
It wouldn't
and
be
hate.
The Last of Us anything if someone wasn't hating on somebody here.
Exactly.
You know? Okay.
Absolutely.
So I know I added in like a few notes, like talking about like, hey, and I have this assigned to Kayla, but I was just going to sort of touch on, no, you're good. Like touch on like, for this episode, like our plan is to, instead of going through each and every episode, we have a few questions we're going to ask ourselves. And a few of these questions actually came from y'all to help us remember our favorite parts of season 1 of the show. And I didn't want to steal this away from you, Kayla, so you can definitely take the ball back if you'd like.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, hey, whatever ball you want me to pick up, girl. I'll pick
tell me twice. Don't tell me twice.
Which really quick though, before we keep going, I do want to plug our Discord.
Thank you.
I don't know how to. Jerica and I are old, and we don't.
Don't
know-
make me feel better, because I sent them a text earlier. Here, I'm getting close to the camera again, so I'm about to go on a Jerica rant. I was like, how do we talk about the Discord? I don't know how to tell people how to get to the Discord. Is it a website? But it's not. How does it work?
Well, I remember back during the war, I don't believe we had a thing called Discord. DropinDropoutPod.com will have a link to our Discord. The Drop In Drop Out Discord has little bits of everything from Drop In Drop Out, whether it's ClickerBait, JK Games, Spotlight Games, Jake Twitchin, Cognitive Clips, GWT More, The Dumpster Boy. It's all there. It's the place to be, if you ask me.
Yeah, and I did
Smells
just
really
post a
good.
link to it in our chat, and High Score Weekly so kindly pinned it for me, so you can join there, because we do, like Jerica was saying, some of these questions are from you guys. We ask it on Instagram too, typically, but it is always fun in Discord because like you can have more of a discussion, and there you can also find what all else we're working on too, which is a lot of things these days, right, guys? There's a lot of stuff going on. Jerica, I don't remember where you left off on our discussion.
Okay.
I do remember. Yeah.
Okay.
We will definitely at some point we can't not do an episode where we rank the hottest characters.
And we're gonna have new characters this season. So
didn't we do that? We did that last season.
We did.
We did.
I definitely said Tommy could definitely wash my truck, if you know what I'm saying. Angel.
Whoa.
They can both wash my truck.
Just in case there's any podcast listeners that their imagination is not that clear. What is a truck in this metaphor? Can we be clear?
My
we don't
titties.
have to be. Great.
Oh, exclamation point, Liddy Titty. In the
Liddy
chat.
titty.
Liddy Titty. Wow.
For the record, Tommy can also wash my titties. So let's just be clear.
Need that in a bumper sticker.
For tonight, we're not washing anyone's titties. We're taking a trip down memory lane, recapping season 1, like Jerica said. We've designed it to go through these questions. It's been a couple years since we've wanted to discuss anything we liked or disliked from the first season, and this will be the first time that you will hear Patrick's opinions on the first season. Maybe he hated it and he loves The Last of Us, but he hates the show. Who's to say? We don't know. We'll find out. Since we played both part 1 and 2 of the game, there will be spoilers moving forward. I'm assuming if you're listening, you are good on spoilers, but we will just go ahead and throw up the spoiler wall. We will also probably pin a comment saying spoilers.
I can do it.
That'd be great. That'd be amazing. Just to clear, we don't want to be the reason that someone doesn't know, someone gets ruined on what's going to happen. That's my worst nightmare. And the less information you have going in, the better. So yeah, that's going to be what we do today. We're going to bring our experience from the games into our opinion. So just know that you've been warned. You have been warned. Thank you for the spoiler pin. We'd love to see it. Dan Goodshow said, I'm trying to wash some trucks for real, for real. Colin Nicholas said he can haul my F-150 if you catch my drift.
Oh, I catch your drift, brother.
Oh,
Extended hatchback.
Oh my gosh. Well, I think we're ready to dive in.
Long titties. Okay.
Our titties. We're going to get banned on our first episode.
No.
If I get banned for saying titty, I'll quit. I'm like,
Sure.
you can't do any better than that. So.
Oh my gosh. Amazing. Well, let's get started. Let's dive into our questions.
I'm clicking on the things and it's not working. Now it is. And we're on the first question. Ow.
It's one of my favorite songs.
Yeah. I don't know where that came
Besides the To a T song.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm not even going to do it right.
Mr.
All right, y'all.
Like what?
Let's take turns. And yes, we are talking about season 1 of the Last of Us HBO show. Just to refresh our little brains here and remember what we liked about it, what we didn't like, and other various things. So the first question. I don't know why I'm hesitating. Favorite episode. What was your favorite episode from the first season?
Let's make Patrick go first.
Whoa, Patrick going first. Patrick in the chat. This is actually a very tough one for me because it could be 3, it could be 1, it could be 9, it could be 6. There's so many great episodes of this show, but for me, it's between 3 and 9. So the Bill episode and the finale. I think the Bill episode, the more because some more podcast lore, the 3 of us and Jeremiah from Spotlight TV, we did a ranking the episode way back after the season was done. And we, back then, my ranking was 9 and then 3. But I think the more I've sat with it, I think that has flipped for me. I think the Bill episode is my favorite of the season for a lot of reasons. It's probably an episode that might come up in multiple forms tonight.
Sure.
So I think I'll keep this a little brief for that sake, but I don't think that there's ever been, when I think about adaptations, whether it's books to movies, books to plays, any kind of variation, musicals to movies, I feel like there's never been that I can think of a better expanding of a character than Bill, and specifically Frank in the Bill and Frank episode, because as we all know in the game, Frank is just dead. There's one note and that's it. And there's a whole bunch of stuff with Bill in Pittsburgh, and you get to learn a lot about his character and where he's at. But I remember so vividly. I rewatched all of the show leading up to today, and I remember so vividly the first time watching episode 3 and just being like gobsmacked at what I was watching. Because up until that point, it was pretty one-to-one in a lot of ways. They had made some changes here and there, but that, like, I remember being like, wait a second, what? What do you mean that we're getting all, and like, wait, Bill's dead? Like, all these things. It was such a cool experience as someone who, as I mentioned at the top, had played this game like 7 times.
Yeah.
Was so the more I've sat with it, I think 3 is my favorite episode by far.
Wow.
Not by far, by a little bit.
Yeah.
I have to agree, and it was a tough one because that was the episode that just broke me. Like, I was just bawling, and I did not expect to shed that many tears for an episode dedicated to a few characters that we spent actually not a lot of time with in the game. And actually we didn't even meet Frank at all. Like, Frank, he was already long gone in the game.
Yeah.
If I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
And that was just something that the show adapted and really fleshed out further. And yeah, like, that episode was just hands down one of the best. It's one of the worst ranked, or like criticized, or like people just hating on it so much because they don't like,
because they're homophobic.
They're homophobic.
Oh, what it is.
Get out of here.
Yeah.
Get on. Get
out of here.
This love story, it's hard to make me cry. It truly is. Like, just from watching content and like all the games I've played have sort of made me, sort of numb to what could be going down, or I can sort of predict where it's going. But there's just something about people growing old together.
Yeah.
That just like, and then it just, it wrecks my soul. I don't know why older people died, and being in love make me so sad.
Yeah. Well, it also just does such a good job of like telling such a complete story in such a short amount of time. Like, thinking through like when there's the first like time jump with Frank where they've met, they have sex, and then it jumps ahead. I think it's 4 years, and Frank busts out the front door, and they're fighting about Frank wanting to love the way that he wants to, and like make the street nice and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And Bill's like, I don't get it. Like, at this point in my life, in my relationship with you, I don't understand why we would waste things just for that. And then you cut to the end when they have, Frank wants to have one last good day, and Frank's painting, which is like the most beautiful painting I've maybe ever seen. And Bill's like watering the flowers, and he's like winking at him. Like, it's like that. He like, at this point in their life and relationship, Bill has learned through his relationship with Frank, like how to show Frank love, and like keeping the flowers alive is something that'll make Frank happy. So I'm going to do it because I love him. Like, those kinds of things that go unspoken is like, oh God, it's so good. Sorry.
So, like, absolutely devastating.
Yeah.
And it's devastatingly beautiful. And I think that that's like a way that I would describe The Last of Us just in general is that. I did want to also highlight, we do have a first-time chatter, Heroic Headgear. Welcome. Thanks for joining for the first time. Hope you enjoy. Did love this episode. And also the second Kansas City episode is also pretty fantastic, they said.
Cool.
But yeah, I actually have a different answer for mine, though I did love this episode, and I do, dare I say, love all the episodes, except maybe one. I love them all, but there's definitely one that I dislike more than the other ones, which I know Jarek and I agree on, and we'll talk about that one later. But my favorite episode is actually episode 8, When We Are in Need.
Sure.
Yeah,
I love this episode, and my top 3 are pretty tied. So in my top 3 is episode 8, episode 1, and then episode 9 too. All those 3 are pretty closely tied together for me. And 8, I think like 8, it's the beginning of the end, and you get a lot of the desperation from Ellie when Joel is so injured and unable to care for himself, and she's having to like really lean into what she's learned from him, like physically and mentally. And the way that she's having to be like parentified in this case.
Yeah.
And I just love everything about that episode and the way that it was shot. I just feel like it was, like most of the show, it's like nonstop, and it's very emotionally, I was very emotionally invested in Ellie taking the driver's seat, and the the interrogation that you get from Joel, like all those little moments added up. Like I feel like we're such a great build up to the end. And I just loved it. I loved everything about it. And then obviously episode 1, the opening scene, cinema, absolute cinema. Jarek and I watched it together in person. We were just jaw to the floor. The scene in the car as they're driving through the town, like, and all the little things that we get, like the little additions, the little nuggets that they gave us too. Absolutely loved those. And then of course the ending, I'm sure we'll talk more about it.
Yeah.
But those are my top 3. But really, I mean, overall, you guys probably know if you've listened to season 1 of the show. I love all of it, but those are like my top 3.
I do want to shout out one more before we go to the next question, but also shout out to Left Behind. So I love that the whole DLC was like, you know, a dedication to that episode, or the episode's dedicated to DLC, which came after the game initially came out. I forgot how long after, that doesn't matter, but it is really cool to see that segment of Ellie's life. A little bit of it is good to add to the story too, just because it is like a little bit of a pre-background, like how did Ellie figure out that she doesn't turn into zombies and stuff, like how did that happen, like and you know, maybe why is she so guarded, and her behavior is similar to like anyone that's been through a traumatic event. And you know, and I forgot, it's the last episode too, but also just calling out that it was cool to see Ashley Johnson be Ellie's mom in the show.
Oh yeah.
And we'll get to that question in a bit, but it was just extra content that I will always just eat up. Any episode that has extra story that wasn't in the game will probably always be my favorite episode.
Because especially with Left Behind, like the DLC, the good parts of the DLC are the parts that are a flashback, because the DLC it balances, like, you know, they had to have like combat in there because it's a video game. So there's like Ellie in the modern day version of the mall trying to like get supplies and stuff. And it's like, that shit's boring. Instead, let's learn more about what it's like growing up in a Fedra base and like that kind of stuff. Another great example of adding content.
Yeah, so I couldn't agree more. I actually didn't play the DLC. I know I'm a fake Last of Us fan. So watching that episode was actually really cool for me, because I didn't know. I knew like obviously some of the lore, like the crucial pieces that we get from the game, but the DLC I hadn't played through. So I did think that was a cool moment for me too.
Hell yeah.
Sweet.
All right. I keep wanting to say episode 2. Question to you. Well, which episode or scene didn't land as well for you from season 1?
Patrick,
I can go first.
Yeah, go.
I think the easy answer is 4 for me.
Is that the one before Kansas City?
Yeah, it's like the beginning of Kansas City. Like
that's it. Same.
Kansas City. Yeah.
Same.
Yes, me too.
Yeah. And I think I'm interested to hear the why for you two, because for me, I feel like there is still like good shit in there. Like in my rewatch, like I remember something that I had an issue with, and I think Jerica, I seem to remember you maybe also having this issue of like this season, with it only being 9 episodes, there just wasn't quite enough time by the end, in my opinion, of the jelly moments, the Joel and Ellie moments. And 4 has a good bit of that, especially at the beginning. We get them, you know, leaving bills. So there's all the stuff in the truck and then camping and that kind of thing. We get the beginning of the pun books, like those kinds of moments. But I feel like there's so much good shit of this time period that they're adapting that they just cut. And I know like they've talked a lot about how things that were very combat driven, they didn't want to include because there's, you know, it's hard to do that. And like they had a budget. They didn't know when they were first filming it that this was going to be like the biggest thing on HBO. So HBO only gave them so much money. But I feel like they added so much extra stuff around Sam and Henry that I think was really superfluous. Like the whole Kathleen and Perry arc was so unneeded for me. Like, I feel like there could have been so much interesting stuff if they just kind of stuck to the Sam and Henry storyline, still have Sam be deaf, which I think was such an awesome like addition to his character to make it really unique and like kind of tell a little bit of a different story. But like, I think about them going in the sewers and that moment where like they get split up, but they get split up with different couples. So it's Joel and Sam, and it's Ellie and Henry. And like, think about how interesting it would have been to have Pedro Pascal and deaf Sam having to navigate that. Like, those kinds of moments I think could have been so interesting to see, instead of like, who the fuck is Kathleen and why is her brother dead and why do I care? Like, I think there's a lot of stuff in there that could have been very cool. We could have learned more like pre-outbreak lore. We could have learned more about Sam and Henry's past, but instead they were like trying to paint this scene of Kansas City for some reason that I just felt was unnecessary.
Yeah, I think it was just
like not a bad episode. It just
but I agree with everything. I'm not going to add too much to it because you hit the nail on the head. But maybe that whole segment was just to figure out where they were going to take, I guess, Sam and Henry's story. Like, they had to find a villain for them. And I guess, but I don't know why we had to care so much about that group. I just feel like they had their own little drama that was just like, I need more time with Joel and Ellie. That's all I care about right now. And yeah, I don't care about these people. I don't. Yeah. I never cared about them. Their conflict just seems so silly to me. So, yeah.
Yeah. I'm glad we all agree, because Jarek and I did. This is one of the episodes I went back and listened to me and Jarek talk about, because I wanted to listen to and remember. I actually haven't. I've only rewatched season 1 once, so I've only watched it in entirety twice. I do want to watch it again before the episode comes out on April 13th. So I will be rewatching it before then. But I wanted to remember what it was exactly that I didn't like, and it's a lot of that for sure. And I think that and this is maybe a discussion for further a little bit more, but I think the way Ellie's character is portrayed in this episode specifically, where she's very much like obsessive about death in a way that doesn't, maybe obsessive is the wrong word. And I think I even said that in our other episode, but like, it doesn't seem as natural to her character the way that she goes about it, if that makes sense.
It's almost like it's a thrill. Like, she's thrilled by it. Yeah, or just really interested in it.
Yeah, and it doesn't really make sense for what we know. And I don't know if that's like the game coming into the mindset, but like I didn't really like that aspect of it, I guess.
I agree.
Her staring at Joel.
I feel like that, from what I remember of like the post-episode discussions, I think that was something that Craig Mazin really wanted to add to her character, was having her be like, because I remember at the end of the first episode discussion, him talking about her like being activated watching Joel kill somebody. And I just feel like that is not an Ellie trait at all. Yeah. Like in the game, that's never something, like, she wants to have a gun and she wants to participate because she feels like she's able to, not because she has this like desire to kill.
It's like she feels a burden for being this person that might provide a cure, right? And so she wants to do her part, and that's her only job. Like, she wants to, and we get to that like at the end of the game and the end of the season 1, like, hey, I'm ready to die to save humanity. That's my one job. And I see that being the driving force for her wanting to participate as well. So yeah, I agree. I sort of liked it, to be honest, though. Like, it's a little bit of a difference, and it's hard to say. Like, I like it, but then I don't like it.
Yeah,
but I was excited to sort of see that side of her, because I'm like, I know why they want to do it that way, and it's probably for season 2.
That's a great point. I've never thought of it that way.
Because you think about like just how much time we have with these characters in the game. It was a lot more interactions. We got to really know them, and that's why they should have cut out that Kansas City episode, so we could spend some more time with Joel and Ellie and got to, because like, as someone that's never played the game, like, you gotta if I'm a writer, I'm gonna make you fall in love with these characters really fast. You know, and I could see them playing with some personality, like writing for their personalities to be a little bit different, to bring people that are watching along a little bit faster. So, if that makes sense. I don't know. I sort of rambled there.
No, does.
That's a very good point.
High Score Weekly does say it is to set up some of her rage for season 2, so it's not so abrupt. I think we'll definitely get into this more in our predictions next week. But I think if they do a lot of these same things I hope that they make a lot of the same choices that they do in the part 2 game, to where her rage will be very well portrayed. Let's just say that.
Yeah.
So, but I'm glad we're all in alignment on our least favorite episode.
Because there's also other moments that I will say for a different question that I think could have been in this episode to also be more compelling, but we'll save that for another question today.
Yeah.
Next question. What were y'all's like most memorable moment or like specific scene?
I'd like to not go first. I feel like I'm stealing all the good shit. You one of y'all go first.
Kayla, go first.
I feel like my answer is going to be one of Jerica's answers, but there's so many good things to choose from, and a lot of what I love about The Last of Us, without going into a monologue, because you guys have probably heard me talk about this so many times, but like I love the exploration on morality and like what that means to other people. I think that's part of my love for this, and The Last of Us actually relates a lot, Jerica, to my love for Attack on Titan. Is also one of my favorite things ever. And do you see, like, now having completed all, how there's like a lot of actually like similarities, but I'm not going to go on that tangent right now. But one of my favorite scenes is the draft scene that they carbon copy from the game into the show, and it's done so well.
As they
in
should.
episode 9, where they're about to get to the Fireflies, is that right? Or they're there actually?
They're in Salt Lake, or not Salt Lake. Salt Lake? Yeah, they're in Salt Lake.
Yeah.
Ellie's having that like kind of PTSD moment of remembering what happens in winter, and they're kind of getting through, and like there's that moment of like, which I love that they included the like, I want to boost you up, and she's like zoned out, kind of reflecting, and she's like, he's like, Ellie, come on, whatever. And then as she gets up, she sees the giraffe, and they really kind of do it pretty 1-to-1 there.
Exactly. Yeah. And I thank you for reminding me, because my memory is, it's fleeting. It's fleeting. But that's one of my favorite moments in the game. And it is also one of my favorite moments in the show, because I feel like it really, as much as we've talked about that there was only a limited amount of time to portray their connection, and it is a little bit differently portrayed in the show than it is the game. I do feel like this moment between them is really important. And I love just the scene. It's so beautiful and well done. And the behind the scenes photos from them filming this is also really good. And not a specific moment, but I do think it's important to call out some of my favorite things that they did in the show that are definitely different than the game. Are the moments where Joel has his panic attacks and his like reflection on his mental health and unpacking like where they highlight his trauma. Someone who personally struggles with mental health conditions and panic attacks myself, and just overall mental health awareness is very important to me. I think that the way that they show this is very, very well done, very tastefully done, and it makes a lot of sense for his character. And I think that it helps in a way that you can't get from playing the game. And it is just different because you're not as, it's just different. And it's good to see in the show, because I think it adds a lot of context and depth to his character. So that is also something that I love that they did.
Me too.
Yeah.
Jerk, how about you?
Gosh, it was hard to pick, but I just landed on, because like I did this like as a test, because I haven't rewatched season 1 in a long time. So I was like, when I looked at this question, I immediately was like, what was the first thing that came to my mind? And it sort of leans into what I was saying about, comment on, Ellie's obsession with helping to kill people and like guns and being fascinated by it. And, even the scene where, which these aren't all my like top scenes. There's one that I'm about to talk about that is the best one. But even when Joel is like beating the crap out of that soldier, I think, and that was season 1, I think. And she's just like watching him like beat the crap out of that guy. And I sort of see that too, like, oh wow, but also like, oh my God, someone's standing up for me. Like I've never had that, that could be a side of it too, but maybe that's where that not, I don't know. And it's not obsessive, but it's like, she's interested, and maybe that's how I need to be someone's partner in this world, or I don't know, to have someone not die on me again.
Well, I think also like how dangerous the world is, and she's never been outside the walls of a quarantine zone. Like, instead of being afraid of it, like there's something about it that like excites her.
Yeah,
That's
true.
I mean, at least she's excited about it. When I think about being in her shoes, I just get really exhausted and like I'm not going to be able to run that fast.
Correct.
I would be dead for sure.
But the scene I want to highlight is like the one that I can't seem to get out of my head is actually the moment between David and Ellie when she's in the jail cell. And for the most part, it's a very similar scene to the game.
That's a good one.
But there are some differences, and it's specifically what David says to Ellie. Basically, like, they have a conversation that, and they do in the game too, but this is along the lines of, like, David basically telling Ellie that he sees, like, a killer in her, or what, so I had it written down because I actually had to look up the line, but he sees something evil in her.
Oh, I remember you brought this up before. I do remember, and we had to look it up then too, and I forgot.
I feel like it says something about there being like there's a violence in her or something.
Yeah, God bless
I'll look it up. I'll look it up.
No, I have it in my notes. It's just all these windows on my desktop, and I click on one video to hit play so y'all can see the video while I'm talking about it. But now I can't find. Hold on, I found it.
Okay, I'll share.
I found it. Nope. Hold on. Just stay tuned. I got it. Just clicked on our ship.
Man's most memorable scene was the Indian scientist going from zero to nuke everything before it spreads further.
True that. Also,
which was good to have.
Shout out to those scenes, like sort of like taking you outside of the world and like predicting like, how are people like dealing with it.
I don't think she was Indian, but yes.
Yeah, probably shouldn't have specified that, but yes.
Okay, let's see. I just had it. I had it right where it needs to be.
I think was it Jakarta they were in? Is that Indonesia? Is that right?
I'll look it up.
Well, Jerk.
Oh yeah, there was the naked man that we got to see.
Okay. Naked man.
Oh, it was a lady. I think there was a lady. There was titties.
It was a lady. Okay.
I found it. Okay. Because I wanted to write again. The way that she says she has a violent heart. That was it. God,
violent heart.
I could never remember that.
Campus
was pretty great too because it's sort of setting up once again, just because I'm so excited for season 2, Ellie. But it's setting her up for that potentially. Obviously, in this conversation, she doesn't realize like that is her, and she's not. She's definitely not David. But who's to say? He's just, I know he's a shady guy, and I never want to be in a room by myself with him because he might eat me, might try to, marry me, and we might start a cult together. So I don't want to be in a room with him. But in his eyes, he is doing the right things. So, and he sees in Ellie that she would also do some pretty drastic things to either protect her community or the one she loves, right? And I love that that is the conversation that he is having with her. And then all of a sudden, this comes directly from the game, just like, when he breaks his finger. And Belle's performance was amazing here, and just telling them, like, tell them they're the little girl, her name's Ellie, she broke your fucking finger, is one of the scenes I like to rewatch a lot. Because she just nails it, and just seeing her, the hatred and the anger on her face, like hit it with her head against the jail cell, is just like, I can't not wait to be devastated by all of Ellie's wrong decisions in season 2. But
that's so. I've not thought about it from that perspective of like, because I've always kind of interpreted it as what happens in the second game is so much fueled by her love for Joel, and more so as you find out by the end of the game that the ability or the opportunity to forgive him and like get back to the relationship that they had before everything went down was taken from her.
Yeah.
Have that. So I always kind of interpreted it as that, but it is interesting that like now with the show, they're kind of setting the groundwork of like, and in a way, it kind of, from the show's adaptation, will make more sense because we haven't had as much time of Joel and Ellie together to build the relationship. So it wouldn't necessarily potentially make as much sense for it to just be based on their relationship because we're not getting it as much. I don't know if I'm making sense, but
you are, and that does make me kind of sad because I do agree with you, Patrick. I do, but not that one is necessarily better than the other.
No. I want to make sure I'm clear. Like I definitely, I'm aligning with Patrick and you with that. If I'm, you're right. I'm not saying like,
oh yeah, no, I'm not saying that's not what you're saying.
No,
I'm just
thinking, we're thinking like 10 million times ahead.
Yeah, I'm just, I'm more so, yeah. To be clear, I'm not saying that I disagree with you or that you're saying something different. I just have
I don't
Yeah,
also
yeah.
want to see like I seem like I'm obsessed with Violet Ellie. That's not the
No.
case.
Yeah.
I'm just set. I sort of do like it, but at the same time, I'm just interested to see how much they lead into that. Yeah,
Yeah.
to bring viewers along.
Yeah.
No, I think both things make sense. And I think like both can be true at the same time because like it makes sense to have to go ahead and set a lot of more of this up ahead of time when you have that little bit of lacking or like gap in relationship, like Patrick was saying. Like you just can't have that same relationship in a show that you can a game, I guess, is what I'm trying to say too.
Yeah, especially when, by the end of season 1, you've spent, if the season is, let's just say 9 hours, 'cause it's 9 episodes, it's probably less than that. You've probably spent 2 hours with Joel and Ellie together.
Just
whereas
walking
in the game
and exploring.
right.
Yeah, like in the
Whereas
game.
in the game, it's so much more than that. Like it's the vast majority of your time than that.
It's tough.
So,
I don't envy them having to make a lot of those decisions.
Yeah.
For
So.
sure.
A couple that jump out to me. I'm glad that you guys didn't cover any of the ones that I wanted to talk about.
Great.
There's so many.
This is great podcast content.
Let's go.
My number one moment is in episode 9, but it's not the draft scene. It's when Pedro talks to Ellie about when he tried to shoot himself. And specifically, like there's a lot of that part that I wish that they had done a little bit differently. That part being the leading up to her getting taken, which we can talk about a little bit later again. But adding that conversation, which wasn't in the game, and him specifically the line when he's like, you probably know like what I'm trying to say, and she says, yeah, it's time heals all wounds, right? And he says, no, it's not time that did it. That line to me is like,
I forgot about that line.
it is. It was such a, for me, as someone who loves this game so much, it being a new line of dialogue between these two characters that I love so much, and it now being like my favorite line between the two of them. I think it's just such a powerful set of words to be for him, and a way to convey to her that my love for you and you basically becoming my daughter now is what has gotten me to, it's taken 20 years, but I'm now at a point where I can move forward, which then, obviously sets up the hospital scene of him trying to get her back. So that's number one for me, like by a fucking line.
Yeah.
But
I can't believe I forgot about that moment.
A couple other quick ones, specifically in the Bill and Frank episode, the strawberries scene, when they're on their run and Frank surprises Bill with strawberries. And specifically for me, this moment is a standout for me because it has my favorite piece of Last of Us music under it. And it's just like, it's the cinematography of it is so well done. Like it crescendos at the time when the sun comes through and you can see like the fucking
start screen.
Kind of, yeah. It's like, oh, that moment is so good. And that conversation when Bill's like, I wasn't afraid before you came here. Like, there's just so much good shit in that scene. And then a couple other honorable mentions. Top of episode 6, when Joel and Ellie come to that old couple's cabin, and just like their whole, like their banter of just like,
forgot about that. Yeah.
Are you telling the truth? When Joel's like, where are we? And she's like, yes. He's like, are you telling the truth to me? And they're like laughing, and she's like, wait, they're Firefly people? Like, there's just so many funny moments in that conversation. Is a standout for me. And then just generally the prologue, like the whole prologue from the cold open of the guy from The Mummy talking about like, what if the earth gets warmer?
Not the mummy.
And what if something like cordyceps evolves because the earth gets warmer? All the way through, the plane crashing, and all, like, there's just, you were saying it earlier, Kayla, like there's just so many one-to-one moments specifically in the prologue that I was just so giddy watching it. I was like, oh my God. I'm watching Sarah be murdered by the army, and I'm like giddy, like almost with like laughter, because I'm like, I can't believe that they're nailing this so fucking well. Like we're finally getting it, and it's so good. So those are a few for me in terms of favorite moments from the season.
The one shot while they're in the car from the back seat, the whole time, is
good ride.
Peak cinema. I don't know shit about theater or anything, but I do know that scene rips.
It's a good scene.
I couldn't go on without mentioning our new first-time chatter, Ann Weaver. Welcome.
Woo, woo.
Hello. They said, I loved the mall scenes, made me nostalgic of the youth, and we get to see some of the last moments of innocence for Ellie
Yeah.
when she got to experience just being a teen. Then in 8, we see The Last of Us. 8's my favorite episode. Whoop, whoop. We see The Last of Us innocence disappear with her taking out the cannibalistic preacher.
Yeah.
Yes, we absolutely do. And I forgot that's also part of the reason why it was my favorite episode. But yeah, welcome. Hope you stick around for the rest of CLICKERBAIT.
Hell yeah. Thanks for being here.
Yeah.
Woo, woo. I love
What do we
when
got?
Ellie goes up and sees like Victoria's Secret and like looking at bras and shit.
Yeah.
Like, it's
That's
funny.
so funny. So funny.
People used to wear
give
it.
us a laugh.
I forgot what she said, but it was something. It was funny.
Yeah, that was a good moment. I do remember that.
All right, how did the show handle? We sort of touched on this on this already, but in case we want to add anything else, but how did the show handle emotional moments differently than the game?
I felt like there were a few things that we've already touched on, things like the panic attacks, that kind of thing, but a couple quick ones. I think for me, I think it's I'm kind of skirting the line here of like kind of talking about something different, but Ellie's lack of like them not really ever having Ellie not being able to swim be a thing. There's one like kind of comment in episode 2, but I think like that the way to bring it into the question, I think if they had that moment a couple more times, and in episode 9, if they had kept it to the source material of them getting into this tunnel and her being sucked into the like
I wish that would have
water,
stayed.
like, and that emotional kind of reaction that Joel has of like, I have to try to save her because I know she can't swim, she's gonna die. And then we come up and the fireflies are there and like that's where they get her. I think there's a couple things like that where like they kind of change some stuff around, and because of that end up handling these emotional moments in a very different way. Another example in episode 6 where when Joel and Ellie have, that very famous scene from the game of them, Ellie confronting Joel of like, you're abandoning me. Everyone I've ever cared for has either died or left me, everyone fucking except for you. Like that scene, I feel like didn't really hit for me as well in the show, but for a couple of reasons. One, we didn't, the thing we kept talking about, there just wasn't enough time with the characters. But specifically, I feel like they handled it in a much different way in the show where it's like good and bad, where I like that we were in Jackson because that kind of sets up season 2, saves a lot of exposition time for season 2. We don't have to cover that again, but we didn't have that moment of Ellie like running away with a horse because she realizes what's happening. Now there's danger. Joel and Tommy have to go save her. She put herself in danger. And then like that fight kind of breaks out, instead of in the show it being that Ellie overhears that she's being abandoned and is upset, with Joel confronting her angry because like you put yourself in danger. I'm just trying to make sure that you stay safe, which is why I want Tommy to take you. And I feel like that scene just has much more of a weight to it in the game because they handled it so differently. In the show. So there's like a few things like that where like throughout the season, some of the changes I think are so much for the better, but then some of them end up making them have to handle these emotional moments.
And I think
that kind of stunk.
And I think the ones that work, because when I saw this question, also the first thing that came to my mind was like in the first episode, we actually get to spend and see the morning routine for Sarah, which in the game we don't get to really spend a lot of time with her, but they can do it in a short amount of time. One episode, you're already like super attached to her character.
Yeah, that's true.
And see that banter between her and Joel. And I love the extra love they gave with that. And then also a little bit of a foreshadow and a new nugget of information about how this virus maybe started was like they were having to pick up flour for a birthday cake, right? Or something with the flour.
There was cake. There was like a few different things.
Yeah. So having that little nugget in there and then just spending a whole day with Sarah before the crazy shit went down was just made that scene even more impactful in the first just in one episode we get to hang out with her. So like any of the changes they're making, like as long as they spend enough time giving us those moments more than just 15, 20 minutes here or there, like a continuous like relationship with this character, then I think the payoff is what we want as lovers of the game. Yeah. So
I agree. Yeah, I agree with both of you. I do think one thing that Heroic Headgear actually said in the chat, in the hospital rampage at the end, it was such a good choice to pair it with slow music and a slower pace.
Yeah.
And I couldn't agree more. I think that was a beautiful choice, and that scene is incredible. But yeah, I think overall I think it's for me an overall positive trade-off between like what they added emotionally and what it did lack. I think like it was so well done, and like we've talked about already, I think there's probably so many hard choices they had to make, right?
Yeah.
Deciding what to put in, what to add. That I think like the emotional payoff that we got was still incredible. So I mean, I still cried every episode. So except the first, I was like Patrick, I was pretty giddy about it.
Yeah.
And I'm
But yeah,
so
that's
bummed that Cognitive Clips is already gone because we're to his question now.
Oh.
Yeah.
He's going to miss it, but hopefully both his ears are ringing or itching.
You know, he'll watch the VOD. He'll watch
Can we
the
just
VOD.
say?
It's his itch. Here's his ears itch when we say his name, I think. Both of his ears, so.
And his butthole.
And his butthole.
Oh god.
Oh, those are the worst.
Yeah.
So Cog asks, what changes between the show and the game were best? Any standout changes that come to mind that we haven't talked about yet? Or
So a lot of them we have talked about. There's
Yeah,
the Bill
yeah.
episode. Easy answer. We've already talked about it. There's what I kind of just mentioned a little bit, but I can expand on it a little bit. The change of episode 6 of it being, instead of being at the water dam and fixing the dam being kind of the action in the game, that was fixed a couple years ago, and they're showing us Jackson. They're introducing us to so many kind of aspects of the culture of Jackson. I think is a really good change because, again, I think that'll save, because season 2 only being 7 episodes, criminal. We don't have a second to waste in season 2. So the fact that we don't have to introduce Jackson really at all, I think, is a huge net positive for the show.
hell yeah.
And then a little bit that what you talked about earlier, Jerica, of weaving in Left Behind, but specifically doing it within the timeline of the game, as opposed to, like, it would have been such a stupid choice to end the show and then have one extra episode be Left Behind, which is how they originally released it. So a few things like that of like moving around the timeline, I think worked.
Actually, I have an idea here. Because I think the thing that we haven't talked about that's a little different from the game is actually High Score Weekly's question. So if it's cool with you, we can just sort of go to that question because he actually asked, do you think the pacing of the end scene with the hospital was too fast? Or would you not have changed it? Because I'm not saying that it was completely different from the game, but it's a whole different experience if you aren't the one playing Joel.
Yeah.
Can I derail really quick for 1 second before
No,
we
please.
start on this? I wanted to add, Leanne Weaver had a comment in the chat that said Pascal's line about falling in his sleep. That delivery was amazing. And I wanted to read that because I forgot.
Yeah.
And it's such a good, when he's giving his monologue to Tommy. And this is also one of my favorite moments. Between some of the best moments in these games are Joel and Tommy together.
Yeah.
And so the bit of the monologue, I'm not gonna read the whole thing, is, and I have dreams every night. What kind of dreams? I don't know. I can't remember. I just know that when I wake up, I've lost something. I'm falling in my sleep. And
He's failing in his sleep.
Failing in his sleep. I'm sorry. That whole dialogue is so good.
It was such a shame for Pedro to have to go against Kieran Culkin in the final season of Succession.
Was
because you weren't like. I'm really hoping that this season, it's like I was saying this the other week to Rose. We were like, I don't know, 6 episodes into Severance. It's like, and here they go again. Now they're up against.
I know.
Severance
That's
season
what I thought
2.
too. I'm like,
fuck.
It's gonna be hard. It's hard to beat him out, but I will say, like, Joel in the show is probably my favorite Joel. You know,
Yeah,
just
you think
and it's because of us just being able to see his, him being vulnerable and like being way more open to sharing like some of the trauma he's feeling, and like, God, even though we're not with him as much in the show, like, that I totally forgot about that share, and oof, it's just shakes you to your core what he says.
But sorry to derail from the hospital conversation, but
it was
a good
great.
segue A good segue back, and thank you, Leanne, for mentioning that, because I did forget about that, and that's a great monologue moment. Game Over Cholo, good segue back into the hospital conversation, said, I did my best not to kill doctors at the hospital. And I also did that. And it was tough.
I was rooting and tooting all the way through there. It was wild. Had no regrets. No regrets.
I think it was maybe like my fourth playthrough. I was like, you know what? Why don't I just use the flamethrower when I get into
Hell yeah. Take them.
Horrible.
Burn the flies. Burn those fireflies.
You already knew what was to come. Burn the fireflies.
But I think to answer High Score Weekly's question, I think there are things that really worked for me in this scene, and there are things that I would have liked more of. Like, I think it's criminal that episode 9 is the shortest episode of season 1 when it's covering some of the most important beats of the game. But it's still almost my favorite episode of the season, despite that, right? So, I think, and a big part of it, I think, is that the way that they direct Joel going through the hospital, and that slow, like, bass heavy music when he's just like so dissociated, he's just back into kill mode because he finally has a chance to kind of right his inability to save Sarah 20 years ago. And so now he's like has this like fever of like, I'm gonna do whatever I can and I'm gonna enjoy it too. Like, he like breaks out Ellie's knife at one point. He's like really kind of laying it into some of these fireflies. But at the same time, I feel like because we kind of jump ahead so fast, and like there's just not as much time spent with like Marlene and things like that I feel like there's some things that don't land quite as well either, personally. It's gonna
be tough for anyone to see someone else's point of view in season 2, because I think for the show, this scene in particular didn't get to show Pedro Pascal as his Joel. Why am I adding all that extra? I lost track. I saw Caleb doing something like this and I got distracted.
Sorry, that was me.
No.
And praying.
I think it doesn't show how shitty of a decision it was. It almost paints Joel as a good guy because he's had that bond with Ellie, and now because in the, obviously I just said I was just blasting through the hospital, but in the game it didn't actually feel like that the first time. It sort of feels sort of terrible because like you're just killing all these,
really gross.
You're killing all these innocent people. But I feel like in the show there's more like an artistic appeal to it when it's slowed down, and you're not having to spend that time of watching Joel like murder all. You don't know much about these people. I feel like in the game you knew for a fact they were a little less
that's a good
hostile.
point.
I don't know, like it didn't paint him in a negative light as much as I wanted it to.
Well, because I also feel like something that the show doesn't do, even though, like, by the end of the second game, we know just a lot more about the Fireflies in general. But the first game, I think, really tries to paint the Fireflies as a objective good faction. Like, they really try to say, like, these are the people that are trying to bring the world back to a place of democracy and peace and these kinds of things. But like, the truth is, the Fireflies, in a lot of ways, fucking suck. Like, it's kind of like a bit of a lie. But in the first game, we really they want us to really think that. So when you're Joel going through the hospital, you're like, I can't believe I'm killing the good guys.
Yeah.
But then, you think about it another second, it's like, okay, well, they're the good guys, but like, we couldn't have had a conversation about what they're doing.
Yeah.
They just are just gonna kill her.
And also, we don't know that this will fix it for sure.
Right.
That's the thing. Like, you don't know. You're taking away her autonomy and her choice, which is obviously like part of what the raw like emotion and the really like emotional levity of it is, right? Whereas like now there wasn't even the option to do that. But yeah, like you said, there's no conversation. There's no lead up. But I think you both hit exactly what I was thinking, and it was hard for me to portray. But yeah, like in the first game, you do see them as more of like a positive force in a way, and like obviously you find out what is going to be happening, but like
one thing I will bring up that Kayla, you sort of, something you said I've already forgotten, but whatever you said made me think of a change I'd like to have. I wish they would have made here would be maybe Joel maybe Ellie not being completely put under yet. I don't know how much people would hate this, but where they have a quick conversation before he makes that decision. Like they have
Sure.
maybe her saying like, hey, I see where you're like grabbing his wrist and be like, I see what you're trying to do here. Leave me be. Like, this is what I want. Like, just go back. Like, I care about you. Just go back. This is what I want to do. If you really care about me, you'll leave right now. And like being able to see that where he disobeys her basically and does this really shitty thing. I don't know, but then she sort of would know like, I got out. That doesn't work.
I don't think it would work, but I think something that I'm remembering that the game does that the show didn't do that I think could maybe have been a fix was Game Over Cholo kind of reminded me about reading the logs. The really huge missing piece of the hospital scene as you're going through and killing these people, you're listening to Marlene talk through how upset she is at the fact that they're going to have to kill Ellie, but she knows that she has to for the sake of humanity. And like reading about like, oh, we have this surgeon, a brain surgeon, like we think that we might be able to actually, like there's hope that we might be able to find a cure. And there's like 4 or 5 different things that you can stumble upon that kind of start painting this picture. Like, you know, maybe you've already killed 15 fireflies, but you're like, oh, this doesn't feel as good. But they don't do any of that. There's like a little bit of Marlene dialogue with that scene of her with her and Pedro, but it's like they just didn't paint it enough to really paint that picture that Joel is killing maybe the hope for humanity.
Yeah, I do think that like I will say from talking to a couple of people that I'm close to that watched it but didn't play the game, because I do try to keep like connected to their thoughts, like knowing like how people do feel that are completely independent, because like we don't have the ability to be unbiased in some ways. I feel like we try, but I do think that the weight was still there for them. But I do feel like most people are going to romanticize Pedro's like decision in a way, because of, like Jerica said, the way that it was portrayed, I think is one thing. But what I hope is that the second season brings more of the like other piece of it, right? Of like taking away that from Ellie. And I hope we do see that. I do think that like High School Weekly did mention, technically she knew she could die and chose that, which is part of why she's mad at Joel later. And I do think that I don't know that it's verbatim said. I'm pretty sure it is verbatim said in the show. Like I like that she plans on like laying her life down basically. I don't know exactly where that's said, but I feel like it is.
Well, I know like when they're talking after the draft, she's like, we have to see this through. And once it's done, we can go wherever you want. We can get a sheep ranch. We can go to space, like whatever. But so there's like this expectation that like, you know, we need to see this through. And like, we all know that if they had asked Ellie would have said, kill me. Like as that being her purpose. Like it's all, I would be shocked if Neil Druckmann was like, oh yeah, no, Ellie also would have been like, no, kill the firefly.
Oh yeah.
Like,
that's like the whole point of the whole game is built around this, in my opinion, the whole kind of like emotional decision making here is what the whole game is kind of like about. And continuing into the second game, which is great segue into Jake Hayton. Do you think the existence of The Last of Us Season 1 will be diminished by the existence of Last of Us Season 2?
I'm so glad you asked that question.
Yes, actually, no, because I think it just adds to it something that I already love. Thank you.
I know her heroic headgear says makes me worried for Abby over hate round 2, which, you know,
I'm so curious to see how this plays out.
This is going to be a really fascinating experiment. I think it's still going to play out that way, where most people are like, what the hell? They're going to keep it from us. You know, sure. I assume like why this happens. Who knows?
And next week we'll talk about when we think it's going to happen.
Oh my God, I can't wait for next
week, have control because I almost started talking. I have control. But yes, I agree with heroic headgear. I am excited to see where that goes. But yeah, I think we answered this one pretty well.
I think so too. Next.
We have
a fan question.
3 left here. I might have went out of order if I did. I'm sorry. I did this real fast. This is what I have is question 7. What's the question 7 for y'all?
I think we're on question 7 that I have is what do you think of the side story episode?
Oh, here we go.
But
we got it.
Basically answered that though.
Listen, I put a lot of questions in there. That one may have been one that didn't make the cut, or maybe that was a duplicate. So,
the only other thing that we talked about like Ashley Johnson being in it as Ellie's mom a little bit because we talked about Bill and Frank. We don't need to talk about Bill and Frank more, but I think that was a really fun kind of side story addition, the cold open of episode.
Yeah, and then Marlene being a part of that story too. So we're sort of seeing like Marlene, because in the game there's actually a note from Ellie's mom. We talked about this on an episode of CLICKERBAIT, just basically talking about like take care of yourself. You're a strong lady. You're smart. I don't know. And then Marlene's going to take care of you, basically. So you get to see like that. Actually, we've never seen Ellie's mom, so it was cool to see her and Marlene, and see that they got to be together. Even though Ellie won't remember it because she's a baby, but it was cool to see Ashley Johnson holding Ellie.
I did kind of miss, not in a big way, but I did kind of miss that in the game, it's clear that Ellie and Marlene have a real relationship. And in the show, Ellie has no idea who Marlene is.
Yeah.
But like, that's one of those ones, if I had to go through all the things that they cut, it probably would not make the top 5 of things I wish that they had included. But
sure.
Mentioning. We didn't mention this, but somebody mentioned it in a comment earlier. I liked Marlene's death scene with the mushroom kiss.
No. Tess.
Tess, I'm sorry. Not Marlene.
No.
Tess.
You're good. I did sort of forget about Tess.
Yeah, I liked that scene. I thought it was very interesting.
I loved it.
And did you really?
Anna Torv, yeah.
Yeah, that's dope.
Yeah, she's a lovely lady. She seems like, I don't know.
She was so sweet. We were kind of hitting on each other. It's no big deal.
Shut up. I need to hear about this story.
I was at what is Kroger in LA, and it's called something different. I just don't remember what it's called, but it's Kroger. Like it's just a different branded name. And yeah, she's in Fringe. So High School Weekly.
Oh.
I was visiting my sister that at the time lived in LA, who introduced me and Rose to Fringe, and we had binged all of Fringe. We had a Fringe binge, and it, at the time, was one of my favorite shows of all time. It's still like probably somewhere up there, but and we're in Kroger, and my sister this is like night 1. She's like, "Hey, if you see any famous people, you don't talk to them here. That is like agreed upon. Everyone agrees. Like you don't talk to famous people in LA. You can look at them, whatever, but like don't make a scene." They're trying to live their life, whatever. So we're in Kroger, and I see Anna Torv, and I'm like elbowing Rose. I'm like, look who it is. And she's like, oh my God, it's Olivia from Fringe. And so I'm doing the thing where I'm like, oh, I guess I do need to go down aisle 7 to look at chocolate, like just to observe her in her natural habitat.
Not perceive her.
And so then we get, and it's like, we're freaking out, like we're whispering, and it's like, oh my God, I can't believe Anna Torv's here. And then it's like, okay, fun's over. Let's finish shopping. We have to go to this bring your own ingredients to make a pizza party, whatever. And so we get in line, and then she gets in line right behind us. And I'm carrying she's carrying a bunch of stuff, and she kind of like starts to drop things. And so I start to help her. And we have this banter at the fucking cash register of, she's like, oh, I think she called me babe. And we're like, oh, thanks for the help, babe. But she's Australian, so it's like so much hotter. And we kind of talk for a little bit, and I go in the car, and I just like melt. And I'm like, oh my God, I can't believe I talked to Anna Torv. It was very cool. But anyway,
that's
a huge derail. Sorry.
What a cool story.
High School Weekly wants to start a Fringe podcast.
I would so fucking do it, to be clear. I've been itching for a reason to rewatch Fringe.
I sort of want to too. I was really into the first few seasons of Pretty because I was a fan of Lost, and it checked a lot of boxes for my Lost loving brain. So
yeah.
High School Weekly says you should have bought it for her. At the time, I was so insanely poor, and she was in Hollywood. I think, if anything, she should have bought my food.
That's right.
That's true. Good point. Wow. Incredible.
Anyway, sorry. I don't remember what we were talking about. I so threw us off. I'm sorry.
Oh, side characters. Sorry. And then I derailed us talking about Tessa's death. And then now we're back on track. Wow. Look at us. We made it.
Look at us.
We're back.
Yeah. Great kiss. I was a fan.
Yeah. I liked it.
Okay.
Said everything right.
I think I'm on the last question now. This is the last one, y'all. What moments from the first game that didn't make it into the show would you have liked to have seen?
Oh, what a good one to end on.
What a good one.
that I have no answer for. I'm just kidding.
No, go ahead.
But yeah.
Well,
No, Jerica, you should go first.
I will say it because it's already been said, so that way I can just get over it. I am bummed we didn't get to see Ellie struggling to swim.
Me
know?
too.
Yeah,
I'm bummed. That's like a big part of the game. We got to see a little bit of like her leaping up there and like forgetting to put the ladder down for Joel, but we didn't see her hop on any what do you call those things? Wooden crates.
Pallets.
Thank you.
Yeah.
It's a pallet.
Pages. Hashtag.
Let's go. But yeah, I was a little bit bummed we didn't get that. So, anyone else? Yeah, go ahead. That was it.
Hero Kipper said at least once could have had a ride on a pallet.
I know, right? That's
Like
not hard to do.
I know they make
that was
in
a
episode
budget.
2. I know there's one moment, and she's like, "Oh, I can't swim." He's like, "Well, what do you mean?" And he's like, "It's like knee deep water." It's like, okay,
They were so close. They teased us. They teased us.
A couple ones. So at that same time period of episode 2, so they changed that up a little bit, where you go through a hotel with Tess and Ellie and Joel, as opposed to just being Ellie and Joel. Because there are a few things from the hotel segment that I were not included that I think were huge misses. One being, it all is kind of tied together, kind of both of these things. Joel and Ellie get split up. Joel falls down the elevator shaft. He's in the basement of this hotel, has to make his way up. But in that's the first time you see a bloater. There's that segment of like, I gotta get the generator on to get power so that I can get back up. And there's that, like, you're being overrun by infected, which is like probably the scariest part of the first game. Which, like, I understand why they cut that. Budget. We see the bloater in episode 5.
Which was great, by the way.
Which was great. Probably a cooler reveal of the bloater in that way than it would have been here. But more so, all of that just to set up, which I think is such a huge pivotal moment for the characters, when Joel and Ellie, after the hotel, they're making their way through town. This is before they meet Sam and Henry. And there's a bunch of raiders down below. And Ellie's like, please let me help you. Like, but so sorry, I got ahead of myself. When Joel finally gets up, he gets jumped by a raider. He's being drowned, and Ellie comes and finds him, shoots the guy, and Joel gets pissed off. They're like, why didn't you listen to me? Why didn't you stay where I told you to? And she's like, well, it was either you or him, and so I killed him to save you. And Joel's pissed because he's big, gruff daddy, and he can't handle being wrong about something. Yeah. And then we get to this moment, and she's like, for the love of God, give me a fucking gun. And he's like, I'm gonna. Here's a gun.
Yeah.
He teaches her how to use it, like lean into the stock. Yeah, right, exactly. And he's like, but you got to make every shot count. I'm trusting you here. Like, she's like, oh yeah, I've shot a gun at rats before, but it was BBs, blah, blah, blah. They have this like really touching moment of like Joel finally trusting her. And then as he's like about to go down, and he's like, oh, and by the way, it was him or me back there. It's like the best way he can say thank you. And he drops down, and she's like, wittily, like, you're welcome, Joel. And then she's like covering you from up top during this next like fighting sequence. But I feel like that, very rambly, I apologize, but I feel like the way that they addressed that in the show in episode 4 was so fucking weak comparatively. We're like, agreed. They crash the truck. She shoots the guy, makes him paralyzed, but like, I don't know, it just felt really weird. Like, of all the episodes, that one to me in ways felt the most like B-level Hollywood stuff of like the combat just felt weirdly forced and like not very well choreographed. And then he teaches her how to use the gun, but he's very like, you shouldn't have to have killed somebody, you're so young. But it's like, I don't know, just a very weird, different vibe for Joel that I think was a miss for that specifically. Yeah. I wish they had included that instead.
Yep, I agree.
And then one other really quick on the upside down fridge scene from Billstown, because we didn't get anything of Billstown, but such an iconic moment of when.
Dang, I forgot. Yeah, that was so dope. I was like, that's one of those moments you're like, fuck, video games are really cool now.
They're so cool.
Naughty Dog does some cool shit. It's just someone hanging upside down, but God, I've never played a game like that.
The Bills episode was so much better than you getting turned upside down in the fridge. But like, there could have been another trap that someone had set that gets him upside down.
And you get to see that. You get to see that perspective of just being upside down and like things coming at you is just pretty dope too.
Yeah.
Oh man.
Yeah, my biggest ones were related to Ellie swimming, like the scene where they jump off the bridge before they meet Sam and Henry. And that the way that they meet them is just very different. And like Joel hurts his back, and that's like a thing like throughout the rest of the game, is like his back being injured. But yeah, that part. And then I also kind of wish they would have just put a little nod to like bricks and bottles in the game into the show. I think that would have been kind of fun. Obviously, this is just me being greedy because I feel like we got a lot of nods, but like I feel like the other ones we mostly talked about that I would include. So that's really my only couple little things.
They better have spores in season 2.
Oh, they won't.
They better. They won't?
No, I don't think so. Because it's the whole tendrils thing.
That's true. Oh, yeah. It is a little bit different, I guess.
Yeah, we haven't seen anyone with an actual mask on either. So, and that sort of defeats being able to see emotion. We'll see. I bet I like to see how they incorporate it maybe differently. That'd be fun.
Question. Are either of you going to replay the game try to replay it before
I'll
the season?
play something around this time. I don't know if I'll get to it before it comes out, but like I'm definitely down. I've been wanting to get back to playing the second game, like on a harder difficulty. I started one time and I was like, I can't do this right now. I can't just pick this up. Yeah. So
Rose and I replayed it on Spotlight Games a few months ago.
Yeah.
And so I don't know that I'll do like a full replay, but I'm toying with the idea of playing the segments that are covered in the show, like using the chapter select to be like, oh, we got this part, we got Ellie and Dina going on patrol. Let me play that and think about it.
Good idea. Yeah.
Doing that instead of like just playing the whole game potentially.
That's fair. Yeah.
Cool. A couple of questions I have thought of from this discussion. Do we have time?
Yeah, we got time.
So one of the things you just talked about with the spores, so they changed it in the show to be tendrils. And then there's also this like network that they talk about in season 1 of like, they really talk about it a lot in episode 2, where because so many fungus in the real world have this like network in the forest where they span for miles underneath the ground. And I feel like they really laid this on thick in episode 2 of like this change, and this is how cordyceps act and communicate, and then we kind of never got anything about it ever again for the rest of the season.
It's like, did it have a point, or is it gonna...
Well, so I guess my question is, do you think that this fungal network, the cordyceps being able to speak to each other through miles of space, do you think that comes back in a bigger way in season 2? Like, do you think whether it's changes that they make for combat sequences or what, like, do you think that that's going to actually come back, or that's just like a little bit of lore that they changed so that we understand why there's no spores?
Well, it scared the shit out of me. It's terrifying. And knowing if that was a thing that was in the game, I hope they do something with it, because I think it's a really unique idea to that adds a whole other layer to a horde of clickers coming at you if they're all like thinking as one. Like how, but was it a creative decision they made because they had plans for later? I don't know, but I hope they lean into it and make it unique from the game, because I would be down for that.
Wasn't there a scene where someone stepped on something and it like triggered a wave?
They're all like rolling around.
So in episode 2, they're in like episode 2 with So there's the part toward the beginning of the episode where Tess does the exposition dump of like, oh, it's a network and they can communicate from whatever. And then they're in the Capitol and they've realized that the fireflies are dead and one of them has been turned, and Joel like steps on his hand or something, and then you see the things move, and then the horde down the street wakes up. So, and that's like the only time they reference it the whole show.
I think that's an element, because like I saw when I was doing some research, like I saw some complaints like online being like a little bit of the lack of like more like objective horror moments that you get in the game that you don't necessarily get in the show. Like I think you do definitely get some in the show, but that could be a way that they play into the more like horror, like scary elements, is like using that a little bit more. Which, by the way, the grandma scene in episode 1.
Oh God, you need grandma back with those tendrils.
Oh my God. Hero Caregiver said, I liked Ellie being good with the bow in the games, and she never touched one in the show.
That's interesting. I've never thought about that.
It didn't even occur to me, and we're supposed to be fans.
Wow, that's a good call out.
That's good. Fake fans.
Yeah, we suck ass
here listening.
I bet I'm gonna make an official prediction.
Let's go.
To lead us into next week's episode, I don't think Ellie touches a bow once this season. I think they've left the bow to the game.
Okay.
Wow. Full
I like it.
prediction. High Score Weekly said fake fans. Which that's a perfect segue into. I'm so excited next week to talk through all of our juicy predictions that we have.
Can I tease it a little bit?
Please go.
Tease it.
So because of how obsessed I am with this, and I watch like everything HBO for the most part, and I saw the news that specifically Mark Mylod is directing an episode of
Oh yeah, I remember that.
Which, if you watched Succession, you might recognize the name. Mark Mylod directed basically all of the best episodes of Succession. He did like every season finale. And then if you watch the show, I won't spoil it because this isn't a Succession spoiler show, but in the 4th season, Connor's wedding, which if you've watched the show, you know that is, a lot of people say that that's like the best Succession episode. It's like very high stress, like kind of an unbelievable episode. And a lot of it is like one shot. Like there's a lot of really cool shit in that episode. And so I saw that he's directing an episode and I was like, I wonder what that could mean. And so then I looked at all of the directors of every episode and all the writers of every episode, and I've put together a deck. I've put together a PowerPoint pitch deck, and I'm going to pitch how I think season 2 will go episode by episode based on who's directing it, based like their history, the things that they've done, whether they've worked on the show or not. And we're going to use that like I'll kind of start the pitch, and then the three of us will kind of decide where we want to take that episode, and we'll kind of all agree by the end where we think it's going to go. So very excited. I've been putting way too much time into this.
This is why we brought this man along, you know?
I already know.
Why is there a man here?
If you listen to anything else, I know Troy Baker talks about The Last of Us on some official podcast with HBO, but let me tell you, he's not trying to make these predictions because he already probably knows the answer. But there's no other show that's going to get it as close to right as we're going to get it, and y'all get to be along for the ride. Yeah, everybody, this is the best Last of Us podcast. That's why it's in the title now. It says The Last of Us podcast because it is us. We are it. Hear that, Troy Baker? It's us.
Oh, okay. I should have worn my Last of Us shirt, but I had to rep.
I couldn't find one. I know I got one.
You got the ink, dog.
I do.
Yeah. Oh, that's true. She's covered.
Yeah, wow. This is a tight shirt right now.
Smothered and covered.
So that's me. Anywho, yeah. I can't wait to get into next week's predictions. It's going to be a good time. Let's go ahead and wrap this dog up. Don't know why I said dog. Been hanging out with the dumpster boy too long.
That's true.
Patrick, is there anything that you're working on that you would like to tell all our friends that maybe have no idea what else you do?
If you have no idea who I am and what I do, I also host the Spotlight Games podcast, even though I'm kind of taking a pseudo break from it, but it's still going to be happening. But friend of the show, he might still be in the chat. Jake Twitchin's going to be stepping in for a few episodes for me, including tomorrow night. So we do our shows every Tuesday night at 8 p.m. Eastern. I think tomorrow night might be the first episode I've never been on. Episode 158. There might have been one other one. I need to ask Cayman, my co-host. I can't remember. There might have been one other episode I didn't do. But there's that. And then also Drop In, Drop Out, which all of us are a part of. Drop In, Drop Out Pod does all sorts of fun things. And it's going to have dropindropoutpod.com has everything that you need to know about all of us and the things that we're doing. So I would just say go there if you haven't already.
And we'll see you guys next week.
See y'all next week.
Bye.
I finally put my mask on right with the
there it is.
The teeth.
Are we going? Hold
Do
on.
I need to end the stream now?